So you're telling me there's students that don't know about this and they're just like messing up their applications?
Yep, all the time.
Nicola,
Hi,
how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Ari. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Good.
I think before we dive into this and we start talking about different things, I think I want to give a quick recap of who you are and your experience so people know why to listen to you. So correct me where I'm wrong and just like fill me in. I know you don't like to toot your own horn, but I believe you've worked with over 1,000 students over the last 8 years, getting into top programs across Canada and America. Ivy League schools in America, universities, U of T, UBC, Queens, McMaster. You've kind of done all of them,
Excellent.
directly guiding them, and you've seen everything over the last 8 years change and navigate. Is that right? Anything you want to add on?
No, I mean that is basically it. I think yeah, really just to add a little bit to that, just like all types of students. I think, definitely students who, want to go into competitive programs like, engineering at U of T, and, students as well that are, maybe just starting out in their journey, might be in grade 8, grade 9, have absolutely no idea, what they want to do, with the rest of their life. So yeah, all sorts of students, different paths. A lot of those students too have changed their paths, changed their
Yeah.
direction anyway. And so that's it's been really, um, I think just like a really honor to be able to help, all of these great kids, great students, find their path and help them with their journey to their post-secondary education.
Yeah, no, I bet. And I have like literally, I think I have about like 20 things I want to talk to you about. We're not gonna be able to do it all, but people want to know everything, from what makes a applicant successful, what are challenges you see across years and years of doing this. The same challenges probably come over, and how parents can help. But I want to go back to what you just said earlier, which is how do you, like you said, students came in and they changed their mind around their career path or their programs or heck, they don't even know what they want to do. How do you navigate that when it comes to a student who maybe wants to be a doctor in grade 9 and then grade 10 and 11 hits and they're like, that's not happening. So what do you like, what does that look like and how do you navigate that?
Yeah, I mean, well, it's very common actually, very very common, and actually, what's even very common as well is like I sometimes have students that are even in grade 12, like they actually have, great. I maybe started working with them in grade 8, grade 9, I'm not meeting with them like every week or anything like that, but we meet in kind of increments, and we do a lot of discussion on, you know where do you see yourself, like we always set those goals, where do you see
Mhm.
yourself, and then, we're always making sure basically that we're doing everything that we possibly can to keep the doors open or keep the opportunities open. That's the biggest thing. So if you do that, then what happens is if you do change your mind or something in grade 12, you decide like, the doctor route maybe just isn't for me. I see myself more in like applied science, going into engineering or something like. At least if you make that change or change, which many students do, it's actually extremely, like a lot of students, like it's more than what probably you would think. If you do that and you prepare well, then when it comes time to actually choosing those programs at those universities, it will be fine. It will be
Right.
fine. And it will even be fine. It will even be fine if you decide, you get into university, you take a year of university and you go, I don't like business. I don't
Right.
want to I want to go back to sciences. You know, it's not the end of the world. I think people think that it's the end of the world, right? So I work on helping students definitely try to find their path and try to help them find what they're good at and what they're passionate about. But the biggest thing is like making sure they keep the doors open.
Okay. And I want to, like, when you say keeping doors open,
Mhm.
what does that look like? Like if we were to define it, it's like you're in grade 9, you're in grade 10, and you're like, I want to be a doctor. And then, you're thinking, okay, we're gonna go for being a doctor, but let's keep your doors open. How do you like plan that? Because there's a parent listening that's like, my child wants to be a doctor, but are they really gonna be a doctor? So like, how do you keep your doors open? What does that look like from a day-to-day, like action-based perspective?
Right. So yeah, so I mean, good question. Um, I think the first thing that I always do as an advisor is I take that goal, that big audacious goal for sure. And yes, that is a goal that's probably 10 years down the road. I mean, if you want to be a doctor, maybe more than that, right? But we take that goal and we work backwards and we just say, like, we just look at that plan. We actually have a great career guide. I think you and I worked on that together, and we look at that and we work backwards and we say, okay, so this is what you need to do. These are the steps that you need to take.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's a little bit daunting for a student, but it opens their eyes a little bit to like just how much work is involved in that. However, at least we're both clear and at least we're both on the same page. And then what I'll say is, like, a lot of times, if you want to be a doctor, a lot of the things that you have to do in order to be a doctor, you probably have to do to be like a great engineer or maybe a dentist, so a lot of those things will overlap. And yeah, so we work backwards, first of all, and we create a plan, step by step, on, and knowing what is it that you have to do. And of course, like, it starts as when we first meet, becoming a doctor, it takes a lot of, like, academic, it takes fantastic grades, and that's got to start in, like, before high school. It's really got to start before high school.
Hmm.
But definitely, in your grade 10 and your grade 11 year, you've got to be taking the right classes. So it's making sure students are on track with that they know the admission averages that they need to get into those schools, into some of the best, health science or life science programs. And then leadership, because that's a big part now of these
Mm.
applications. Leadership, community involvement, getting some experience, usually in the field of, like, study that they're
Yeah.
going in, getting something like that as well too. So, yeah, so
Okay.
it's a plan. Yeah.
And okay, and I wanna, I'm jumping ahead, but I want to know. So you mentioned that earlier, getting leadership experience, getting experience in the field that you want to study. How
Mhm.
important is that to your application process?
I think it really helps. I think it really helps a lot. I would say it's definitely important. However, students don't have to necessarily get experience in, like, if they're going to become a doctor, they don't have to necessarily work maybe in a medical clinic, but maybe they could work in a dentist clinic, or something, maybe in an old age care home, or like that. That just really, really shows admission officers that the student is serious. It shows that they are researching their future profession, basically. And yeah, it would definitely stand out. So yeah, it's very important. But if it's not possible for a student, there are other things that they can do. Like, they can, do things that still give them the same skills that they would get at, say, working in a care home, or like working in a medical clinic, or some sort of like hospital setting or something like that. But there's lots of those opportunities out, so it's very, very
Yeah.
doable. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. And I also want to go back to what you said about, maybe you don't, maybe you pick a program and then you change. So I think a common fear for so many students is, what if I don't get in? Is my life over? Like, is that it? Am I just like living under a bridge or something? I think students get really stressed about that. Like, what
Yeah.
if I don't get in? So,
Yeah.
what if you don't get in? What are your options? What does it strategically look like at that point?
Yeah. So, I mean, like, as an advisor, first of all, um, I'm pretty much 99% sure when I'm working, 99.9% sure that when I'm working with a student, I'm not going to, if they really want to go to a school, and if they have that long-term goal of being a doctor, an engineer, a computer scientist, whatever it is for that student, my job is to make sure that, they are going to go to a school in their
Yeah.
first university. So my role is to, like, take a look at a student, take a
Yeah.
look at, their grades, take a look at their leadership, take a look at, because a lot of these supplementaries, they involve, like, interviews too. Not every student is a solid interview student at 16 years old, right? So we work with students with those things. But my role is basically to, take a student and be very clear with them, be very honest with them, and set them up for success. So if they don't get into their first choice school, they might get into their second or their third. And if it really, really is important to them to go to a certain school, there are ways where you can go to maybe your second or third choice, do very well in those programs, taking the right classes so that you
Hmm.
can transfer to the school that you want to go to in the following year.
Yeah,
Yeah. So it's not the
gotcha.
end. It's not the end of the world. But I understand. Like I understand that students they want to get it right the first time. They always do. Like
Of
that's the big
course.
thing. They want to get it right. However, like my first thing that I say to students, it's not. I don't believe it's a school that makes a student. I always think it's the student that makes the school.
Nice. I love that line. We
Yeah.
should put that one on a t-shirt.
Yeah. Sure. For sure.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I also want to now understand, you've mentioned overall that holistic planning is so important because you can win big, you can not win big, but honestly, you can kind of weather any blow if you have a good plan. It's almost like a little bit like an investment strategy. It's like you can kind of weather anything that happens as long as you've got plan ABC, which is what you're talking about. I also want to now, understand, having worked with so many students, what are the traits of a student that gets into a good school? Like, what are the repeating patterns you see every year where you're like, this student is doing the right things and they're going to crush it? So, what is that you see for the student that's listening at home so they can begin emulating that?
Well, I think number one, like what first thing that comes to my mind, I think a lot of students think I don't have to worry about this until grade 12. Like, grade 12, I'm good. And we've seen, I mean, I've seen so many times, and many students are successful when they come to us in grade 12. But I think sometimes there's that little bit of a setback just because they have not planned early enough. And truth be told, everything happens, in grade 10 and grade 11. Like, really, that's where everything counts. Because if we're looking at, if we're looking at universities, and some of these universities do have early admissions. And actually, some of them don't have early admissions, but if you actually apply early and if you're all set and you've taken the right courses, prerequisites, you're getting really good grades, you've got the leadership, and you're able to show all of that, like by say October, November of your grade
Hmm.
12 year, then you may get an offer even before the holidays. And so that's
Right.
what a weight off of a student's like shoulders or off of a parent's shoulders. Like, going into like the holidays going, well, my kid's already got an offer from a university. So I would say the biggest mistake is just like I can wait till the beginning of my grade 12 year. You can't. You will really set yourself up for, I guess like maybe second or third place rather than that first place that you want
Hmm.
if you don't get going early. And like we have students that are as young as grade 8. A lot of that right now is like research and thinking, what do I want to do, and making sure that we're on top of our grades, making sure we're taking the right classes. Like there's a lot of that. That's so important. That's the base, right?
Yeah.
And then slowly building up those leadership roles. So like those things, it doesn't have to take a ton of time. You just really need to know what to do, and you need to know how to execute on those things. So I would say biggest mistake, leaving it way too late. Even halfway through grade 11, it's not too late, but it can definitely you can definitely cause mistakes in your applications if you don't start early.
Yeah. And what are those mistakes? What are those mistakes that it can cause?
Not taking the right classes in high school, not taking the right prerequisites, or maybe taking them like a little bit, like if wanting going to something like engineering, at a big school. Those schools like to see that you have those prerequisites done.
Right.
And
Gotcha.
if you're leaving your sciences and your math to kind of the second half, I would say that might leave you way too much stress in your grade 12 year.
Yeah. And then I guess the other one we've heard from students as well, and I want to get your input on it, is kind of last minute resume stuffing because they get stressed that their application isn't good enough. What's your opinion on like is that one of the challenges you see?
Absolutely, absolutely. Like, for sure, like when schools are asking, schools want to know that yes, that you have, you're not just an academic student. That's very important. It's number one, but they want to also know that you can balance extracurricular activities, other responsibilities, things like that, as well as getting those nice high marks. And they want to see, a little bit of consistency. They don't want to see that you're jumping around to like 10 or 11 different activities. They want to see, you've been on student council since grade 9, or well, maybe not offered in grade 9, but they want to see that you've been on, student council grade 10, grade 11, and grade 12, that maybe you've worked yourself up from a member into like a leadership role. So they always ask, and scholarships do the same thing. Like they know when you're in grade 12 and it's like, okay, I got to get a volunteer role. What can I do? I mean, I've been asked that question so many times. And, it's not about just doing it for the sake of doing it. They will read
Mm.
right through that. It's about students finding something they are passionate about, and then knowing why they're doing it, knowing the impact that they're making, and really being able to tell the university, the scholarship committee, what they've learned
Yeah.
from from that activity.
Yeah. No, totally. I'm glad you said that, and I think it helps nobody when students are doing these like things just for the sake of doing them. It stresses them out. It doesn't even look good on the application, and it maybe doesn't even have a great impact on, whatever it is you're trying to drive because you're just kind of doing it to hopefully put a bullet point on a resume, which is just no good, right?
Exactly.
Um, and I want to also talk to you about, well, I want to talk to you about the misconceptions, and then I want to talk to you about writing because I know writing is so important, and now we have AI, and everyone thinks it's going to write for them. But I want to get your opinion on all those things. First, what are the biggest misconceptions that students and parents have about the university admissions process that you kind of have to re-explain over and over again to them? So, what are those biggest misconceptions you see?
I think, yeah, I think they don't really know sort of how, like, first of all, admissions works. I don't think they understand, like, really the whole process of, when you apply, when is a good time to start preparing your supplemental, when is a good time to, there's a lot actually. It's like really hard to honestly already say one thing, but I think it's like
Okay.
when to
Well, you can
prepare.
give me a couple. You can give me a couple.
Yeah, when to prepare, what the schools are looking for. So what U of T is looking for, will there'll probably be a lot of things that will overlap, right? Will overlap in what McMaster is looking for. But there are
Mm,
certain things like, and it's really important for a student and parent to understand, like, we want to make sure when we are writing that we are aligning our goals, our values, the things we want to pull out things that we have about ourselves that
yeah.
are, that what, U of T is looking for, right? So, and that's not necessarily like a certain activity. That's more about, the things that you've learned and grown as a student. Like, U of T specifically, they love, critical thinkers and people that can problem solve and work in teams, and, and really time management, because you're going to need that if you're in U of T, right? So like that's what they look for. And I think, it's not just about getting really good grades and getting, these outstanding leadership roles and initiatives, but it's understanding how can I show U of T, who I am, other than my academics, and also my, my leadership that I'm obviously showing here, right?
Yeah. I mean, I that makes a lot of sense. It's
Mhm.
like it's less about the resume and then the grades, which obviously you need as like the foundation of what you're doing. But if you can't articulate exactly how you fit into that school, and it seems like it is different from school by school, and it changes as to what
Yeah,
they value. So
yeah.
that makes a lot of sense. And now
Yeah.
you
And
mentioned writing.
and
Go ahead.
US, yeah, sorry, US schools especially, like they really ask those, those questions. Like you're going to see a lot of questions now on, like all of these big schools, and they're going to ask you, tell us about a common question is, tell us about a challenge, right? I mean, they don't really care about the challenge so much. They care more about the perseverance, the resilience, how did you problem solve? Like tell us the specifics about those things. And what did you learn about yourself? What did you, tell us, like what are some key perspectives that you're going to bring to the University of Toronto?
Yeah. No, totally. answering questions like that, and I guess you've noticed this a little bit. You talked about it a little bit as a team, and in speaking with you, the questions are getting more introspective than they are explanatory because of probably the rise of AI and
Yeah.
how easy you can like just pop in. I did this, turn it into an essay. So I also want to dive into now writing essays and you know, why can't you just use ChatGPT to write your essays? Like, why not? So, what is it like with you and students trying to use AI for these applications? And how is that? What recommendations do you have? Should you be doing that? Should you not? I feel like I know what you're going to say, but I want to ask.
Well, I mean, we are in that, we are like, but we're not going to get away from it 100%. And I don't think that, like, I don't think AI is like terrible. I think
Totally.
students can actually learn a lot from it, right? And you can use it in a sense that will actually help your writing. Like you can actually use it that way. But yeah, I mean, it's been a problem even for us. Like as you know, I can tell immediately. Like I can look at something. You did not write that. And if I was to put that under, which universities will do too, like they will flag it. It will we flag it. It'll absolutely be flagged. So it's much better for a student to like obviously there's things like templates, there's things like that we can, sorry about that, there's things like that we can use to help guide. We talk a lot about specifically the star structure because it forces the student to talk about that role in every single way. They have to why they did it, what they did, the results from that, the impact, and then also what they learned. So we really train them on that so it gets easier. But AI, yeah, it's a problem. It's a problem for universities. They're gonna flag it. And it could mean you working very hard on your academics and all of your other things, and you taking 5 minutes to write an essay with AI. It could mean you not getting into your dream school.
Yeah,
So
I mean, I think you said it so well. We're not like AI is it's a thing. It's here to exist, and this incredible thing. We should all be leveraging it where possible, but to use it to essentially mask off its work as yours is not the way to go about it. And I think you've hit the nail on the head. It's like use it to synthesize ideas to maybe help you understand what to do. But at the end of the day, it really shouldn't be replacing your actual writing. And even nowadays, I mean, there are companies like Turnitin and whole companies that literally exist and their whole purpose is to flag AI content. That is the whole premise of their organization. And some of them are getting contracts with universities, right? For this specific issue. So definitely it's almost just not worth the risk. It's like you might as well spend the hour and a half writing your essay or longer versus, oh, in 5 minutes, ChatGPT did it, for potentially getting flagged and not even getting a fair shot, right? Eh,
exactly, yeah. And the universities want to hear from you. Like they want to hear about you. They want to hear from your own words. They can detect. Like I mean, it's got to be authentic. It's got to come from you, and you're the only one that can really write about you, in the best. So yeah. So I think yeah, it's been difficult. But I think students that are they've got that goal again and are set, they don't want to make mistakes, they're not going to use AI, so they're
yeah,
gonna do
totally.
it themselves. Yeah, yeah,
Totally. I mean, yeah, the pack will naturally separate itself. The
exactly.
great students will get better and they'll also be better at writing, right? It'll naturally happen. And I want to now talk about writing specifically. You talked about, you mentioned STAR, you mentioned a couple things. What is your biggest piece of advice for students writing application essays, and how to make them great? Like, what do you recommend for that?
Detail, detail, give me the details. So um when you're writing about, let's take for example, you're writing about your work maybe with a food bank. They you can write an essay that's kind of an overview of sort of like how you, but they actually really love to see those little details, like like actions, your actions that you produce, like through the work that you did within that role. Those are the details they love to see. um challenges that you had. So, maybe all your volunteers didn't show up one day for an activity. How did you get over that challenge? They love to see those details, because what that does is it actually shows the university, instead of you just telling them. Like, you're actually showing them through your actions. So
Right.
my advice is, as yeah, like definitely write down those actions. You might, like, a lot of students think, oh, they're so simple, it didn't really mean anything. Like, I just did this. Like, oh yeah, but like, that's what you did, and that was part of what you produced at the end of it. And so that's how you're authentic, and that's actually how you fill up these beautiful essays, is by showing them the details. Yeah.
Right. Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Mhm.
And you know, when you're writing these essays
Yeah.
and you're trying to add these details, you mentioned the STAR framework a little bit. Do you want to touch on that, what that is, and
Yeah.
how it works?
Yeah, so STAR, it's pretty simple. We use it here. It's one of the first things we teach students, and we kind of drill it in, drill it in, drill it in. When they're missing part of it, we're going to let students know, like, you don't have any actions in here, and I see your the situation. I see why you did it. I see what your role is. I know what your role is, but I don't know what were all the little things you did within your role. So that's the action part. So it's just basically, yeah, the situation, which is like why you did something, and what that organization is. Task is like your role,
Hmm.
and what your main responsibility is. And then the actions, again, details. Like, I led students through, a science project, or I helped build a robot, or like all of those little actions. And then result, is, what did you produce in the end? How, did you raise $500? Did you, have 30 students join your new club? And then a little bit on, I actually go star. This is another little tiny bit, or it's actually star squared, but it's reflection. And reflection is just, where was the growth for you? What did you learn? Like, what did you get to practice? What did you, discover about yourself? What did you improve? Those are the things that, those are really, 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 details that the universities want to hear about and want to see.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
they're going to be different for everybody. Everybody's going to be different, which is so great.
Yeah. I mean, I love that you broke that down, because I think like there's so often we get asked, how do I do details? And you end up with these like borderline bullet point essays. And I mean, yeah, it's a skill, right? So I think I'm glad you broke that down, because it gives students at least something that's a bit more actionable on like how to actually write that way.
Yes.
um and I know before we turned like the recording on, you and I were talking about some of the questions you often get, and one of the ones you shared was, should I be applying to early admissions, and does that give me an advantage? So do you want to answer that? Like, what is early admissions? Should you apply early? Is there an advantage to that? And how do you navigate early admissions?
Yeah. So, I mean, it depends really on, not every school has early admissions. Okay. So, first of all, so not every school has them. U of T does, UBC does. Um, I, I always say, yeah, like, why not apply early? Because applying early might get you in, you might get in earlier. The only time I would say don't apply early is if, like for UBC, especially because with UBC, you have an essay that you have to write. You definitely don't want to rush that, because it is a big part of your application. So, if you come up December 1st is their deadline, and say November 15th, you're just starting that essay. It might not be good. Like, it might be. I mean, if you're a brilliant writer, and you've kind of thought about it and planned it, maybe. But if your essay is not good enough, then I would say you'd wait for the regular decisions. Early admissions, yes, I say, for most cases, especially like U.S. schools, like they've got ED and EA, and I would say yes, it gives you a smaller chance of getting, like, it does give you a slight chance of getting in, if, like, yeah, earlier, if you have everything that you need to have. Okay, it only
Right.
helps if, yeah, like, your grades are really good, you've got a really brilliant essay that you've written, or you're ready for your interview, whatever that might be, whatever supplemental that might be, then absolutely yes, you should be applying early. And then when you apply early, what happens is, like in the case of UBC as well, not only do they look at your application earlier, and even if you don't get in, even if you don't get in early admissions, doesn't mean like you have to reapply. They're just going to take your application and roll it over to like regular admissions.
Hmm.
So you know, the only thing that you have to be careful of is if you're really not ready. If you're kind of like him and Han, I don't know if I'm like, if my, if I don't know if my essay is good enough, like, I just don't know, then I would say don't,
Right.
like, wait till regular. But if you've got that, like my students, we're getting ready. You're going to early admissions. Of course you're going to be. And then if you don't get in because maybe your grades are not quite high enough, we're going to make sure that the supplemental part is so that when regular admissions comes along, you get that offer, right? So yeah, so I say yes for, probably, I don't know if I had to give it a number, probably 75-80% of the time, yes. Unless, I've had to tell some students, yeah, your essay's not ready. I would not advise to send this essay in. And that would be coming from a very, very honest opinion, not just from me, but like maybe other people that have read their supplemental as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, you definitely don't want to send a undercooked application in. But I think
Yeah.
the students are saying your application's cooked. I think that's negative at this point. I does all these um, things, but that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Well, so one other thing too, I was going to say is like sometimes too, when it comes to UBC, their major scholarship as well. Like in order for you to be eligible for those or like looked up, you have to apply by the early,
But yeah, yeah, yeah.
right. So same, yeah. So like there's a lot of pluses, I think, to it. But like, definitely, you're not just going to put your application in because you want to be eligible for the scholarships. If your application is not, because you're not going to get that, and you're probably not get into UBC as well too. So yeah, so I think, yeah, I think it's just, again, that all goes back to being prepared, right? Like if you're, starting this early and thinking about, answering those questions. Do I have enough roles? Do I have enough things to show? Am I using that? Like all of those, I'm using the star structure. Am I highlighting myself the best way that I possibly can? You'll be ready to go.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense. And I want to hear from you about internships and co-op opportunities because there are most ambitious students that are looking for those things. And how do students get internships or co-op opportunities? How do they do that if they do? And how do you navigate that if you're a high school or student and you're thinking of your career? And what do you recommend? How do you tackle?
Yeah, like I mean, there's some programs that just naturally have co-ops, like um, engineering, right? Like that's just something you're going to be doing a co-op with in most cases. So and there's other programs as well where you may be doing some co-op as well. I would say, as a university student, you want to really set yourself, if you don't have a co-op option, I think it's always a great thing to do. Take a co-op option. The only problem with that is it sometimes will extend your degree a little bit. So instead of doing 4, you might be doing 5 years. If
Mm,
that's okay with you, then I think co-op gives you. I mean, I think gives you great experience. I think it allows you to really see, what you're going to be doing as a professional. So yeah, co-op is great. There are some programs that don't offer co-op, right? So experience that's probably going to have to come from the student, during the summertime, setting themselves up, building a great resume, creating a LinkedIn account, networking. Like school is not just all about books, like going into a classroom and listening to the teacher, doing your homework, coming back, writing your, like that's
yeah.
part of it. But school should really be about, you know, meeting people in your industry, or maybe not even in your industry, but like meeting people, connecting, networking, because that's how you set yourself up, right? That's how
Mm,
you actually get a lot of these great jobs. So I think, and I think, a lot of parents I talk to, I mean, that's their dream, right? It's like my kid, after spending this money on their education and them going through these 4 years of stress, because it is stressful, coming out with like having a job like right at the end of that. And sometimes that happens a lot for students if they, get into like an internship or a co-op, either through the summer or through the co-op program that they are, involved in, with their program. Sometimes they have jobs like right at the end of it. It's like, here,
Yeah.
come see us. You graduate, come, like you're starting with us full time. So, I think isn't that what education is really? I mean, it's not all about that, but a lot of it is. Like a lot of it is
Yeah.
like, I want this prize at the end of it. I want to see the results of my hard work and everything that I put into it. So, I say, yeah, like um, if you can get, some kind of co-op or then absolutely. I think probably why engineering is such a popular program. But a lot of opportunities in business as well too.
Yeah.
I think too for students, like I know a lot of students don't necessarily want to go down that road, but trades is a great place
Yeah.
for students to go to now too, and a lot of opportunities in nursing. I mean, now as a nurse, if the student is really inclined to going down that direction, they can get almost their whole education, like depending on the province, almost their whole education, paid for. It might be later down the road, but they can get a lot. Yeah.
How does that work?
Well, with nursing, there's a ton of grants. There's a lot of loan forgiveness if agree to working in certain locations. So, like locations that might be a little bit more, I guess, like where there's not a lot of healthcare. There's not like
Yeah.
opportunities. So if they go and work and for like a year or something, they can get 20% of their student loan. Take like 20% of the student loan paid for them, right?
Yeah.
I know BC has a nursing grant of $2,000. In Ontario, they actually, if you're willing to study there and then also work there, they're actually willing to pay for your education. So, like, yeah, I mean, I don't think a lot of families know that, all of those little
I
details.
didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes like that does sometimes help students make a decision. Like if that can happen,
Yeah.
great, right? And with nursing, yeah, like you'll be hired you'll be hired probably right away. Like you won't have
Right.
any yeah,
Yeah.
getting a job. Yeah.
Gotcha. And I guess, that there you go. I did not know that. Now
Yeah.
we know how
Yeah.
that works. That's an option for so many students. I know, I know one of the questions that you had here was, and we get it so often, what is the best school for what I want to study? So I think for some of like the key programs that we get, it's like medicine, sciences, engineering, business. What are the best schools for these programs? What do in Canada, obviously there are the American schools, but like Canada, what are the best schools for maybe those four? What, in your opinion?
Ugh. Well, I mean, again, like it's a very individual thing because we can say definitely like that, UBC Sauder has a great business program. It certainly does. U of T engineering, like I think that those are well-known programs and known schools. But like I'll be honest, like a school like U of T, it's a very challenging school. It's very academic and it's not an easy school. It's not an easy school to spend your first year at, for sure. So that really, really depends on the student, because like again, like what I said is sure you can go to a U of T and you think that you're going there because of the prestige. You're going there because yeah, it's a great school and it's well known and it's globally known, but like that might not be the kind of learning environment that a student necessarily needs. So I would prefer to like look at schools on a more of an individual basis,
Hmm.
and look at them for like, each student, like what would be the best. And certainly so what I usually say is like, let's plan this out. Let's definitely have some schools that are what we would call maybe reach. Like they're definitely competitive. Even if you're a student sitting at a 94, 95, 96% and you've got that leadership, it's still going to be a challenge for you, right? It's there's still not 100% guarantee you're getting in.
Yeah.
I would say that's like, that's your reach. And then I'd say like, let's pick one or two where, you're right now, if you don't really change anything, you're on target. And then, I always say, just in case, we're always going to have that backup. We're going to always have that fallback school. And it really depends again on what's important to the student. Like there's some
Mhm.
schools that give out great entrance awards, just by being a good student in the high school, you may get an award where some of these bigger schools don't do that as easily. They're not as like generous with their
Yeah.
scholarships. I take what's important to the student. But I mean, yeah, if we're going business, probably, yeah, I think U of T, Rotman, I think Western, I think UBC, awesome schools, engineering, Waterloo, U of T for sure. What else do we say? Do we say like sciences? I think health science. I mean, McMaster and Queens, I know
Yeah.
are that probably two of our biggest applications for health sciences or life science people wanting to go into medicine. Yeah, but students make a lot of changes. Like they have their head and like, this is where I'm going, and they even get in. I have had students that get
Yeah.
in, and then they go do a tour somewhere, and they go, yeah, I just like I don't the vibe here is not me. I kind of prefer
Right.
Queens. I prefer Queens or something. So they change their mind. Um, that again is about keeping the options open, right? So we're not going to apply to one school. We're not going to put all of our
Yeah.
eggs in one basket. We apply to multiple and hope, best scenario, you're going to get multiple offers. And
Yeah.
the hardest part is going to be picking what school you're going to go to. And it's a pretty good problem to have.
That's great. I love it. And I think what you said as well, it's like what might be best on paper or best on employment rates, starting salaries, university rankings may not be best for you as an individual, right? And I think that's so important. I'm reflecting back to, UBC in your first year, you're in a standard timetable, right? Which for some students is what they need in terms of like the structure. And then
Yes.
there's other students who are trying to not be in that times they struggle with that. It's not for them, and they really grapple with that. And I was one of those students where I was doing so many things that it was a massive challenge for me to navigate this like standard timetable because I had to be at class at like 6:30 that, and they wouldn't let me move it. Like I couldn't even change classes, because that's how they forced you to fit into that. And as other schools where you have way more flexibility, and students don't even realize that. So I think what's right for you is might be very different than what, you know, universityrankings.com or even what we might say, right? It's about, knowing
Right.
yourself and making
Yeah.
those
I mean,
decisions.
yeah, I mean, I think you need to go in, you need to take tours. Like I always say that to students, like take a tour because you're going to be spending the next 4 years of your life there. Like maybe not, maybe some students live on campus and some students will not, but you're spending 4 years. You really need to know, you got to get a feel for it. You've got to talk to people that work there, other students there. You should be looking at your first year courses and seeing like, okay, what's different about, McMaster Health Sciences versus Queen's Health Sciences? Like, is there any
Yeah,
difference? Does anything work better for me? You should be looking at things like, um, what are their student support services, right? Because
yeah,
we do have a lot of students that they work so hard in high school. They work so hard. They push and push. They get their grades up. But there's going to be a different jump from what you do in high school to what you do in university. It's not easy. If you're getting an 80, or if you're getting a 95% in high school, you probably aren't going to get that 95% in university. Like it doesn't happen. Sometimes students need that little bit of extra support, and
yeah.
that's the learning style. And I think you look at schools that will offer that will give that support. And not all of the big schools, I mean, they probably have it, but it's probably harder to get those resources there than at
No,
small.
I know for sure. I remember I walked into my first year econ classroom, and I think there was 50 rows. I think it was 50 rows. That's how big the lecture hall was. And that's when I realized, oh yeah, this is not like high school at all. And I remember one time I like sat, I had something going on. I think I had a lot of work to do, and I'm like, I'm not going to this class. I'm skipping class today. And I sat outside the classroom and I was doing like my homework, which I know is like not popular talking about. I skipped class at university. But I was sitting there and I remember the professor walked out and he just kind of looked at me and he just kind of walked right by me. And I was like, oh. He doesn't even know who I am. He doesn't even know that I'm like, I sit in the 23rd row for the last year and I just missed lecture today. He doesn't even realize. And I think students don't even understand that depending on the school you go to, that's how gargantuan the difference is in the class sizes. Because I was so scared. I'm like, oh, he's going to see I'm not in class today. And then he
Yeah,
just kind of moved on and didn't even,
yeah.
even if he did recognize, he probably wouldn't care. But I don't even think he just even noticed me.
Yeah, you're definitely a lot more independent. I think definitely grade 12, you take that little bit of a jump. There is, I think teachers expect a little bit more, and you've got to start because you're going to university next year. But I one of the biggest yeah, I think things that students have said to me when I talk to them, once they've done, halfway through the first year, they go, I didn't know it was going to be like this. I knew I was going to have to do a lot more on my own. The biggest thing I've learned is like taking accountability for like all of the things. I don't have
Yeah.
anybody reminding me anymore. I don't have, mom checking in, is your homework done? I don't have a teacher kind of like, tapping me on the back, you missed this, right? Or, they're taking attendance. Yeah, in high school people know when you're not there. In university, not so much. Not when there's 350 people in a classroom,
Yeah.
definitely.
And I mean, yeah, some classes maybe, but most no. Like I would say there's certain program specific classes where they might check, like maybe if you're doing labs and such, but um big lectures, yeah. And some students like that. They like the freedom, kind of like my story there, and then others they don't. And I definitely not saying you should I'm not trying to say you should skip classes for the amount. That's not what I'm trying to say. Um there's some student that just listen to that. It's like that means I can skip all my classes at university. No, don't do that. Each class costs like $150 or something.
Yeah.
And then, Nicola, I think one of my last questions for you, and then we can begin wrapping up here, is students and parents want to know what does a great student profile look like? What does it include? What have you done? And what does that consist of?
Yeah, I think a great student profile. If I was to, it really depends. Again, like, are we talking about a grade 12 student, like who's just about to apply to school? Is that what you're sort of like a maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
okay,
let's say you're about to apply to school, you did everything correctly and perfectly. What does
yeah,
that ideal student profile look like um, for the person who's about to hit submit on their application?
right. So again, okay, a little bit different between the programs, but obviously um, standout grades, number one, and not only to stand out like an overall grades, but if you're going into a specific program, if you can do well in the prerequisite classes. So, for instance, you're going into engineering, math, science, like just like and English, okay, but particularly math and science. Like, make sure you are doing, because they're going to look at those things. They're going to go, okay, calculus and vectors. How did that student? Like, they're going to look at that. So that's number one. Grades. I always advise students, if you're falling back on something, where your grades are dropping overall, I say you got to give up something. You got to find something, give it up, and focus on those grades, because that's the part that's the part that's most important. Um, I think also for a student, if they can show that they've done something a little bit above and beyond with their grades. So if they've taken an AP class or IB, but so long as they've done well, so long as they've done very, very well in those classes, if they're falling way back and again not getting very good grades or not doing well in their exams, then I would say don't take those classes, because it's much better off to, right. But I'd say if you can get a little extra brownie point either by doing AP, IB, or taking a grade 12 class in grade 11,
Mhm.
that's excellent. And then, yeah, learning how to write, learning how to have a really great presence when you're on like an interview, being able to talk about yourself and talk authentically. You don't have to be perfect. They don't expect any 17, 18-year-old to be perfect. They're not looking for that, but they're looking for students that, have some confidence, that can actually answer a question when given to them. Writing, like I said, like that should be, they want to see that you've gotten kind of past that high school level. They want to see quality writing, authentic, non AI quality writing. And again, what you're writing about. So, getting an initiative, like having an initiative, like there's membership roles, there's leadership roles, but an initiative, it just goes above and beyond. What that means is like you found a problem, you found something in your community that or school that needs work that you can help, that you're passionate about. We sometimes call it a passion project, that you're passionate about, and you are going to do something to solve that problem.
Yeah.
Because you learn so much, you naturally get those great skills from doing that. So that's a standout. That's a standout student. We had a couple. Well, we had more than a couple. We had a lot of students this year, but like I have a couple that have already, they've gotten into all of their schools. I have, a couple of big scholarship winners. I'm not gonna, announce anything too big, but they've gotten so much result just because they did all of those things that I just said.
Yeah. Well, I I think that's really, really well put. I think that might be probably one of the most valuable parts of the entire like podcast today.
Mhm.
And we left it till the end, didn't we? So you got to watch all the way.
Yes,
But no, I think it is really a holistic profile.
it is.
And I think some of the parts that you shared, I think it's going to be great for students and parents to know at least how to increase their chances, how to be a great candidate, and it's probably going to be calming to know the world isn't going to end because there's these like pathways you can take
Yes.
as you're going through it. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think we're going to have to bring you back. There's like a solid 11 different questions I didn't go through like that I have on my list, and we'll probably have to bring you back. But thank you so much for your insights, Nicola. I think students are going to love them. And yeah, thanks, and we'll have to bring you back on the pod.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. It was great. Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, just any other questions that come in, certainly I'd love to answer them.
You bet. Well, yeah, I think we might even have to ask around, round up the questions from the community, and then bring you back on. I think maybe we'll do that for next time.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. Yeah. I don't have all the answers, but I will do my very best.